What's up, everybody? This week we're examining social psychology. It's pretty interesting that some of the classic studies that occurred when this field was first getting established, like the Zimbardo Stanford prison experiment or the Stanley Milgram's obedience studies, are things that seem far-fetched today or unethical, but we're seeing examples of that groupthink mentality on Facebook or Instagram, or places where that there's some sort of social pressure to act a certain way or to respond a certain way. So the same phenomena continues. So one of those is the bystander intervention theory or effect, which says that the more people that observe emergency, the less likely people are to intervene. And this really was noticed with the Kitty Genovese murder in New York, where 38 neighbors heard someone getting murdered, and then no one called for help because they all thought somebody else would do it. So I wanted to demonstrate this one point in a class that I was teaching. And so I decided that I was going to pretend to faint during class, and then when people wouldn't help, to be able to say, okay, people didn't help because they thought someone else was going to do it. So that was my plan as a way to prove this. So I showed up for the class that day. I told people I hadn't been feeling well, that I was probably dehydrated from mountain biking. I walked around the class with my arms full of papers. At one point, I pretended to trip, threw the papers up in the air, and then fell down, pretending to collapse. I was down for about a second, and then I heard a bunch of commotion. And so when I got up, instead of no one having moved, there were two people that had jumped over tables. One person was standing above me, ready to do CPR. One woman was in tears, and two other people had their phones out, ready to call 911. So this totally contradicted bystander intervention theory. That wasn't the way I was going to demonstrate it. But seeing when things don't work in psychology is just important to see when they do. So what we discussed as a class, other than debriefing what it felt like to have your instructor pass out in front of you, what we saw was that the bystander intervention effect didn't apply because everyone knew me and they were worried about me. Plus, I had primed them saying, I'm not feeling well, this could happen. And then even if there was a stranger on the street, but they come up to you and said, hey, I'm really lightheaded. If you don't see me to make it to my car, can you call for help? Right? That you already would have been identified as someone to help. So fortunately, since this is an online class, you don't get to see me try to do this again. But it's an example of the bystander intervention theory and when it works really well and sometimes when it doesn't.